Welcome to Nollywood France channel. I'm your host, Cyprian Josson, and today I'm inviting you into a fascinating new world, the world of AI filmmaking. I have always believed that every movie begins long before the camera starts rolling. It begins in the imagination. It begins with a question. It begins with a character. Sometimes it begins with a single sentence. And today, with artificial intelligence, I can take that first idea and begin transforming it into characters, scenes, images, moving pictures, dialogues, and eventually a complete movie. But there is something I have learned that I want to share with you right from the beginning. Artificial intelligence cannot replace the storyteller. AI can help me produce a movie, but before I ask AI to generate anything, I have to know what movie I want to make. This is where our journey begins. Welcome to AI Movie Lab. In this first episode, I am going to show you how I move from an idea to a premise, from a premise to a logline, and from a logline toward a complete story. And throughout this 6-episode series, I will use one fictional movie idea as my example. So let's begin. When I begin developing a movie, I don't immediately open an AI tool and type, "Write me a 2-hour movie." No. I start much smaller. I start with an idea. An idea is the seed of the movie. It doesn't have to explain everything. It doesn't need complicated dialogue. It doesn't even need a title. It simply gives me something interesting enough to make me want to ask, what if? What if? You see the question? Just 2 words. What if? For my example, my idea is simple. A Nigerian lawyer discovers that her client has been framed for murder. That's it. This is my starting point. I don't yet know exactly who the murderer is. I don't know how the conspiracy works. I don't know how the story ends. I don't even know how many characters I will eventually create. But I have something. I have a situation that creates questions. Who framed the client? Why? Who is the real killer? Can the lawyer prove her client's innocence? And perhaps the most important question, what will happen if she fails? This is enough to make me curious, and curiosity is extremely important in filmmaking. If my idea doesn't make me curious, I shouldn't expect my audience to become curious either. So when I develop an AI movie, I first ask myself, what is my idea? Then I ask, why is this idea worth turning into a movie? Now that I have my idea, I can develop it into something more substantial. This is where I introduce the premise. For me, The premise answers a bigger question. What is this movie fundamentally about? My original idea was a Nigerian lawyer discovers that her client has been framed for murder. My premise becomes a brilliant lawyer must risk her career to uncover a conspiracy hiding behind a murder case. Notice what happened. My idea introduced the situation. My premise introduced the larger dramatic conflict. Now I know that my lawyer is not simply investigating a murder, she is taking a risk. Her career is at stake. There is a conspiracy, and there is something much bigger behind the case. This gives me somewhere to go. I can now begin thinking about the kind of protagonist I want. Maybe she is brilliant. Maybe she is ambitious. Maybe she has an excellent reputation. Maybe she has spent years building her career, and suddenly I have another question. What happens when the person who has everything to lose decides to fight for the truth? That question begins shaping my movie. This is why I don't rush into image generation. If I generate an image too early, AI may give me something beautiful. It may give me a beautiful courtroom, a beautiful lawyer, a beautiful police station, a beautiful Lagos skyline. But beautiful images don't automatically make a movie. I need a story first. Now I come to one of the most important tools in screenwriting, the logline. A logline is a short description of the movie that tells me who the protagonist is, what they want or must accomplish, what stands in their way, and what is at stake. So my logline is: when a Nigerian lawyer discovers evidence that could prove her imprisoned client innocent, she must confront a powerful conspiracy before the real killer silences them both. Now I have something much stronger. Let me break it down. When a Nigerian lawyer that introduces my protagonist, I know immediately who my story is following. Then discovers evidence that could prove her imprisoned client innocent. Now I have the central objective. She has evidence. She has a reason to act. Then she must confront a powerful conspiracy. Now I have opposition. Someone or something is working against her. And finally, before the real killer silences them both, now I have urgency. I have danger. I have stakes. And that is why the log line matters. When I am producing an AI movie, I may eventually generate dozens, perhaps hundreds of images. I may create 10 videos. I may write thousands of words. I may create multiple characters and locations, but my logline helps me remember what is my movie actually about. Whenever I become lost, I can return to my logline. If a scene doesn't contribute to the story, I can question whether I need it. If a character has no meaningful purpose, I can question why that character exists. If a beautiful AI-generated image looks spectacular but has nothing to do with my story, I can leave it out. The logline becomes my compass. Who is my protagonist? Now I need to know my protagonist. In my story, the protagonist is the Nigerian lawyer. I don't want her to be simply a lawyer. I want her to become a real character. So I begin asking questions. Who is she? What is her name? How old is she? Where does she live? Where did she study? Why did she become a lawyer? What does she believe? What does she fear? What does she want? What does she have to lose? And most importantly, how will this experience change her? For my fictional story, let's call her Sally Idowu. You will find that movie on this channel. Enjoy it. Sally is a brilliant Nigerian lawyer. She is confident and highly professional. She has built a successful career. She believes in justice, but I don't want her to be perfect. Perfect characters can become boring. I need weaknesses. Perhaps Sally is sometimes too confident. Perhaps she believes that intelligence and hard work can solve every problem. Perhaps she has never encountered an enemy powerful enough to challenge her entire understanding of justice. Now, the movie becomes more interesting. Because my story isn't only about solving a murder. It is also about Sally's transformation. She begins the story believing that the law will protect the truth. During the story, she discovers that the system can also be manipulated. And by the end, she must decide how she is prepared to go to defend what she believes is right. That is an emotional journey. Now I need opposition. Every strong story needs conflict. And that brings me to the antagonist. The antagonist is not necessarily a villain standing in a dark room. The antagonist is the force working against my protagonist. In my story, that force could be a powerful businessman. It could be a corrupt politician. It could be someone inside the justice system. It could even be an entire network of people protecting a secret. I haven't decided yet. And that's okay. At this stage, I am still developing this story. What matters is that I understand the function of the antagonist. My protagonist wants to uncover the truth. The antagonist wants the truth to remain hidden. There is my conflict. I repeat, there is my conflict. Truth versus concealment. Just like light versus darkness. Justice versus power. One lawyer versus a system. One lawyer versus a system determined to stop her. And now I have the engine that can drive my movie forward. But conflict alone isn't enough. I also need stakes. The stakes answer a very important question. What happens if my protagonist fails? I repeat, what happens if my protagonist fails? If Sally fails, her client could be convicted of a murder he did not commit. But that's only the beginning. Perhaps Sally could lose her professional reputation. Perhaps evidence could disappear. Perhaps witnesses could be threatened. Perhaps Sally herself could be a target. And now the audience has a reason to keep watching. Because the question is no longer simply, will she survive the case? The question becomes, can she solve the case before it destroys her and the innocent person she is trying to save? That is much stronger. Whenever I develop a movie, I want to keep increasing the pressure. The audience should feel that every decision matters. Every discovery should create another question. Every answer should lead somewhere else. That is how I create suspense. Now I think about setting. My story takes place in Nigeria, but Nigeria is not simply a word I put into an AI prompt. I need to decide exactly where my story happens. Perhaps Lagos, perhaps Abuja, perhaps another Nigerian city. If I choose Lagos, I need to think about what my audience will see. The roads, the traffic, the architecture, the police stations, the courts, the offices, the homes, the clothing, the vehicles, the weather, the sounds, the people. The setting becomes part of the storytelling. And this will become extremely important in later episodes, because when I start generating AI images, I need to maintain visual continuity. If I establish one particular courtroom, I don't want AI to give me a completely different courtroom in the next scene. If I establish Sally with a particular hairstyle and clothing style, I need to protect that visual identity. This is why story development comes before image generation. I am not just creating isolated pictures. I am creating a cinematic world. There is one more thing I want to consider before I move forward. The ending. I don't necessarily need every detail, but I need to know where I am going. Is Sally going to win? Will she expose the conspiracy? Will the client walk free? Will the real killer be discovered? Or will Sally discover that the truth comes at a terrible price? I don't want to write the first 10 scenes without knowing what kind of destination I am building toward. The ending helps me make better decisions at the beginning. It is like traveling. If I know my destination, I can decide which road to take. If I don't know where I'm going, I can drive around for hours and still end up nowhere. The same thing happens when I use AI without a clear story. I can generate hundreds of images. I can create spectacular scenes, but I may not have a movie. So, what have I learned in episode 1? I have started with an idea. A Nigerian lawyer discovers that her client has been framed for murder. I have developed that into a premise. A brilliant lawyer must risk her career to uncover a conspiracy hiding behind a murder case. Then I have created a logline that gives me the protagonist, the objective, the conflict, and the stakes. I have begun defining my protagonist, antagonist, conflict, stakes, setting, emotional journey, and ending. And now I am ready for the next stage. But there is one lesson I want you to remember. Don't ask AI to make a movie before you know what movie you are making. AI is incredibly powerful, but I still need to be a filmmaker. I need to make the creative decisions. I need to know my story. I need to know my characters. I need to know what I want my audience to feel. Once I know that, AI becomes a powerful creative partner. And that is where the real excitement begins. In the next episode, I'm going to take my logline and turn it into a movie script. I will show you how I move from the story idea to acts, scenes, characters, dialogue, and individual shots. Because an idea may give me a movie, but a script gives me a roadmap for making it. I'm your host, Cyprian Josson. This is Nollywood France channel, and this is AI Movie Lab.